When I used to teach, I used to hate teaching the class after lunch, mainly because the students were always bouncing off the walls. I think it's quite the opposite this evening, so I'm going to try and keep you awake after your coffee, so we'll do our best. When I was in school and when I was growing up, I always liked alone time. I always liked to take time to myself. But on the other hand, I always wanted to be a leader. I didn't fully understand what leadership meant to me, but I wanted it. And the thought struck me, how could I be a leader, yet enjoy quiet, alone time? How could I be a leader if I needed my time to think, my time to write, and my time to read? I was lucky enough to have a phenomenal English teacher in school and in college, and I often asked him what leadership meant to him, a principal who led a school of over 1,300 pupils and 150 teachers. And he often told his students, and he told me of the story of John F. Kennedy going to NASA space station. And on the tour of NASA space station, John F. Kennedy came across a janitor, and he asked the janitor what he did in the space station. The president obviously was expecting the janitor to say that he did what he was supposed to do. But the janitor stopped, looked JFK in the eyes, and he said, "Mr. President, I'm putting a man on the moon." That, to me, struck and stayed with me, because to me it showed that we can all lead in different ways. We can all bring different qualities to the table, and we don't necessarily have to be that outspoken leader. So today I'm going to share with you my thoughts on what we call, and is called, the quiet revolution. And as I was struck walking around the exhibit today, is just how much healthcare experience there is, and how much new, exciting, innovative ideas. But the key question to me is, how do we wrap that together? How do we lead forward in the healthcare industry, or in any industry, to bring about the change that we so desperately need? So what can I bring versus what I can't bring? I was again struck on the Lewis here this morning that I know very little about practical medicine. Apart from the odd first aid course or the lifeguarding course that got me through college, I feel quite inadequate walking around this exhibit today. But what I can bring is some personal and professional experience about what leadership is. What I can bring is my time spent on the Washington Ireland program in the States. What I can bring is my experience on state boards. And that's not to brush up my CV. That's for me to say, actually, I know what I'm talking about, and I don't feel so bad. So let's go on this journey for the next 15 minutes or so, and let's see what we can talk about. And I've one ask. I want you to think about leadership, and I want you to press the reset button. I want you to just forget about what leadership is for a moment as we go through this. Now, I might add that by the end of the presentation, you can also press the rewind button and forget absolutely everything I said, and that's your choice today. So reset or rewind. You've probably all seen these words. What is a great leader? What does leadership mean? It's someone that's outgoing, decisive, passionate, visionary, enthusiastic. But sometimes we never think about quiet, about introverted, and about humble. And I'm here today to talk to you about introverted leadership. Susan Cain, who talks about this quite openly, says that 1/3 to half of the population are introverted. So who am I talking to? I'm talking to your relatives. I'm talking to the people who call you their boss. I'm talking to your bosses. I'm talking to your friends. So 1/3 to half the population are introverted. The thing about introversion is there's an extreme bias towards it, and Susan Cain talks about this. What we need to clarify is that introversion is not about shyness. Shyness is something different. Shyness for people is painful, whereas introversion is not at all. And I think we owe it to introverted people and leaders to really understand their qualities, their capabilities, and their skills. For if we understand those, I think then we can then move towards a healthcare environment that is collaborative and that is innovative. The concept of introversion and extroversion was first introduced in 1921 by Carl Jung. Again, there's a need to understand that it's not about shyness. And more importantly, We're not all one way. We're not all introverted and we're not all extroverted. We're somewhere along that line. And again, it's about identifying those qualities. Some influential leaders who associate themselves as being introverted, and some on that board you mightn't have thought are introverted. Barack Obama is said not to like big groups of people. He can't handle that amount of people. He likes his own quiet time. Abraham Lincoln is the same, and Bill Gates. They all use their strengths as introverted leaders in quite remarkable ways, each in their own right, to achieve the goals that they set and that they desire. And the funny thing is, workplaces, where we work, where we study, all seem nowadays to move towards extroverted activities, and I'm at fault. This was my classroom when I was a teacher a few years ago, and I taught leadership to students in secondary school. You'll see that in my layout of the classroom, I favor group work. To an extroverted person, that is heaven. They can command the table, they can command the room. To an introverted person, that to them is hell. They don't like group work. They don't like talking in big groups, and I'm at fault. And I'll come back to my asks of you in a short while. In a study in 2013, Kienweiler identified 6 strengths that introverted leaders embrace to achieve impact. And they are taking quiet time, preparation, engaged listening, focused conversions, writing, thoughtful use of social media. And how important is that last one in the current political realm? Thoughtful use of social media. Introverts typically put all these strengths together. They put them together in order to influence, although each strength on its own is quite powerful. Now you might be sitting there saying, Philip, what's the point of all this? Why are you telling me all of this? I think if we understand these 6 characteristics, we as leaders or people who are being led can get a better understanding of how to achieve and how to work together. So, there are 5 main characteristics of introverted leadership. Again, I say this so you can go back and achieve collaboration, because I think if you fully understand these 5 characteristics, you'll be able to share more, be able to work together more, and you'll be able to achieve more. The first characteristic is introverted people and leaders think first and talk later. Why is that important? I say to you this is important because if at meetings you'll see the person who isn't saying much, who mightn't say an awful lot, because they're thinking first, they're talking later. And I've seen it where those people who are quiet are often overlooked, as if they've nothing to say and nothing to bring to the table. When the matter of fact is, they've quite an awful lot to bring to the table, but they're not being supported enough to bring out those thoughts. So they think first, they talk later. They focus on depth. So if at a meeting you're talking about in-depth stuff, they prefer that than to these short conversations. The second point here is also key for day-to-day relations and relationships. I know myself, as someone who is an introverted leader, that I would prefer to talk about a deep subject than talking about the weather or how the traffic was that morning. That to me is absolute hell. But sit me down at a table and let me talk about Trump, politics, Irish politics, Theresa May, Brexit, I will talk to you for hours. It's about identifying each other's strengths and focusing on the depth. The third characteristic is they exude calm. Now at this point I might say that extroverted people might also exude calm. Extroverted people might also talk later, but these are the main characteristics. In times of crisis, think back to those 3 leaders I pointed out before, Barack Obama. Exude calm when there's a crisis, and that for people in a company or organization, particularly in healthcare situations, is a valuable skill to have and a valuable member of your team. The fourth one is that introverted leaders, and by extension people, they prefer writing to talking. Give them a good book, let them get into that book, and let them talk about their experience. They need time to think through before they will talk, as I said earlier. And the fifth one, and probably the most challenging one for people who are extroverted, is that introverted leaders and people embrace solitude. They experience what is known as people exhaustion. And it's real. A large group of people introverted leaders don't like. They need time to go away. They need time to recharge their batteries. And once the batteries are recharged, then they're fully okay to embrace people again. Why it is important? Because of the workplaces that we're in. People who exude introverted characteristics may need the time to step out, may need the time to recharge and then come back into the fold. Again, it's really important that we understand all of these. The question is, how do we support introverted leaders? If you are a leader in your relevant field, or if you're part of a team, how do you want to be supported? A few ways in which we can do that. Number one is give them the space to produce their best ideas. A lot of this may sound simple, but sometimes we overlook it and sometimes we don't fully understand it. Allow them to prepare before meetings. Again, quite simple, ask. If introverted leaders know what they're going to talk about at a meeting and get to prepare before a meeting, they can do much better. Follow up after meetings. Ask them their thoughts afterwards. Ask them for feedback on different relevant points. They will have had time to think about it and may offer you a different perspective. And keep the lines of communication open. Always touch base with introverted leaders if they are part of your team. Respect their need for solitude. I spoke with this earlier on. Allow them to work independently where necessary. Now, I'm not for 1 minute saying that group work should be stopped. What I'm saying is allow them the time to work first on their own and then bring their ideas to the table as part of a group. And be mindful of office layout. In a time where now office space is quite expensive, we have a tendency to do open plan, open floor offices where there's too much noise going on. And okay, it's never easy to have offices individually, but allow them the space to go to a place that's quiet to allow them to really think through their ideas. Just be mindful of it, and again, I know there are constraints with that. And the third thing, and perhaps the most influential thing to my mind, is to provide them with effective training and professional development. Now, to you today, this concept of introverted leadership might be new and might be something that you're struggling to understand. You might think that it's not relevant. But provide the people in your teams or your organizations with the resources before discussion. Again, it's all around allowing them the time. And crucially, introverted leaders, no matter what stage of the leadership career or path they're on, benefit from working with mentors. They benefit from the one-on-one chats, they benefit from the one-on-one coffees, and they benefit from that time of advice. So we've had 6 themes, we've had 5 characteristics, we've had 3 ways in which we can support them. Many of you know or have heard of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. And to some of you may have read that speech in full. And why am I telling you this story today? I'm telling you this story because I want you to understand how we can all wrap this together and how we can make something useful of this. On the day that Martin Luther King gave his speech, he was accompanied by a current sitting congressman by the name of Congressman John Lewis. And some of you may have heard of the recent conversations that he's had with Donald Trump. Not really conversations, more online arguments. And Congressman Lewis stood on the steps with Martin Luther King that day, a leader of his time and continues to fight for civil rights in America. And perhaps you may have seen my adoration towards Barack Obama. It's on purpose. I adore this man as a leader and as an introverted leader. But why Congressman John Lewis? I had the pleasure of meeting Congressman John Lewis about 3 years ago in the Irish Embassy. And he spoke about leadership, and we asked him why he did what he did. Where did he get the strength to do it? And Congressman Lewis said to me, if you want to make a real impact, no matter what type of leader you are, no matter what way your day is going, you always have to find a way to get in the way. And no matter if you're introverted or you're extroverted or you don't associate yourself with any of those, always find a way to get in the way to make a difference. And I think that's crucial for us here today. When we come together to collaborate, when we come together to share ideas, we need to find a way to get in the way. At the start, I had one ask of you, was either to reset or to rewind. And hopefully you've reset the button on what leadership means to me, to you. Hopefully you'll go back to your places of work tomorrow or this evening, and you'll say to yourself, who are the introverted leaders in this building? They may not be known to you. You may not know exactly who they are. But reflect on what I've said about supporting them, about providing them with the necessary tools to become effective leaders. Again, you can press the rewind button. You can ignore everything I said. That's your choice. And always remember that the problem with being a leader is that you're never sure if you're being followed or being chased. And on that note, I'd like to leave you. It's been short and sweet, but I hope you've gained some experience of that, and hopefully you'll identify with introverted leaders as time goes on. Thank you.